afternoon. This is Derek Chamblee, broadcasting from Chamblee, Atlanta, the next great American city. Battleground Zero, the epicenter of the 2017 civil defense of the United States of America. Beautiful day so far, reasonably clear, very few clouds for the great American eclipse in this part of the country. At any rate, it's winding toward 2:30 in the afternoon. We're just a few minutes away from nearly a total eclipse where we're at here in Chamblee, Atlanta. At any rate, it's Monday, August 21st, 2017, following the breaking news, Trump path, of course. And one of the articles of today that he's already on his way campaigning for the 2020 presidential election. Another article quoting the senator from Republican senator from Maine, Susan Collins, saying it's something to the effect it's doubtful. Remains to be seen whether he's going to get the Republican nomination. And we want to remind you again that this is the purpose of his campaign rallies. And one of the other articles was getting to the chairman of the Republican National Committee that is working on behalf of the president toward continuing to build the party and toward the 2020 presidential election. And it's very, very difficult for an incumbent president to be rejected by his own party. But the thing that we wanted to draw out today is that this time around, President Donald Trump is not just candidate Donald Trump. He's learned a lot about the process, and this time around, at the very low-level state caucuses and whatnot, where delegates are ultimately selected to the Republican National Convention to cast their particular vote toward the nomination. This time, those lower-level delegates are going to be represented by Trump supporters, and so that in the primaries and whatnot that happened in 2016, when candidate Donald Trump won states, delegates based on the primary results, but was facing a peeling off of those delegates because they were still loyal to other candidates like Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, so on and so forth. But this time around, we expect him to use all different kinds of tactics to basically put his own Trump supporters in the lower level caucuses and whatnot, and they will be loyal to our current president, and use various strong-arm types of tactics where the other participants, as part of the Republican Party, feel that they've got to go along with President Trump's nomination to continue to receive favor from our current president. And we're following today not just the attempting to get some pictures of the eclipse here coming up in a few minutes. We're following the Alien and Sedition Act of 1798, signed into law by the basically newly named Federalist Party, signed into law by the second president, John Adams. And in 1798, this was considered necessary to eliminate non-citizens and deport them if they were considered a threat to the United States of America, and also make it very, very difficult for those that were not born in the United States of America to become full citizens. And this was due to some hostilities between the United States, newly formed United States, and France that was undergoing a French Revolution. And this was the basis also later under national security for basically the things that were done by Woodrow Wilson by jailing, imprisoning those that spoke against the federal government during World War I. And also it was used again during World War II by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to imprison in concentration in camps, detainment camps, those that were of Japanese, in particular Japanese American descent, and have a number of people out here looking at the coming eclipse here. It's still a clear sky. So we're following in Wikipedia the Alien and Sedition Act, and the Federalist Party controlled the 5th Congress, and John Adams from Massachusetts was part of the Federalist Party, and it was the Federalist Party that promoted the United States Constitution, which came out of the Articles of Confederation, replaced it, and it was the anti-federalists that were for state rights, and the anti-federalists were primarily from slave-holding states. And as they came into the Union and succeeded in the American Revolution, at that point, if, for instance, the president was John Adams instead of George Washington, it's very questionable whether states like Virginia, slave-holding states, would have agreed to the strength of the federal government to rule over them holding slaves in their particular states. At any rate, this is the foundation of this nation, and the Federalists also believe that the various state constitutions and the various state courts could be overruled for the good of the good of the Union by the Supreme Court, that the United States Supreme Court, the federal Supreme Court, in that branch that was created, would pass the final legal judgment so that the various states were uniformity. And so out of this particular foundation and the whole debate, President Trump saying, where's this going to end, removing monuments, there's not a lot of difference between George Washington and Robert E. Lee. And we got into this on another broadcast that in the Dred Scott decision by the United States Supreme Court in 1854 that upheld the Fugitive Slave Act that was signed by the first president, George Washington, that in the state of Virginia, slavery was legal and had just been upheld by a decision, the Dred Scott decision in 1854. And in the debates, the great debates between in 1858 between the Senator Stephen Douglas of Illinois and Abraham Lincoln for the U.S. Senate seat in Illinois, over and over, Senator Douglas stated that Abraham Lincoln was going to go against the decision of the United States Supreme Court. And of course, the slaveholding states and whatnot were basically saying, after this election, if Abraham Lincoln wins, this is 2 years later, if Abraham Lincoln wins, we're going grant us a seat from the Union. So at that time, 1861, slavery was legal in Virginia, so it's very questionable in terms of the honor and integrity of Robert E. Lee deciding to be the general over the Army of Virginia, which is, we said it before, it's probably something that George Washington would have been torn to follow. The same thing, he's following in the footsteps of George Washington, because slavery was legal in Virginia, and they did not agree that a president and a federalist-based central government could rule over what they had already decided in their particular state constitutions and whatnot, and their interpretation of the law. Now, we're going to continue with this story, but we wanted to focus today on the Alien and Sedition Act of 1798. This is Derek Chamblee, broadcasting from Chamblee, Atlanta, the next great American city, battleground zero, the epicenter of the 2017 civil defense of the United States of America, awaiting as much of this, it's going to be almost a total eclipse from where we're at here in just a few minutes. This is Derek Chamblee, CYRADYO, CyberCitizen Network. It's August 21st, 2017, the great American eclipse. Freedom. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. This is Derek Chamblee, broadcasting.